Professor Joanna Moscoso, UNICA President.
Thank you very much, Laura. A very warm welcome from me as well. It is a pleasure to open the first webinar of 2022. UNICA in this difficult COVID era is organizing many events online. And so we are expecting, like in 2021, many different activities to be done online. And this is the first one. It is an exciting topic for us, the impact of international experience in the academic careers of doctoral candidates. UNICA is a network of 54 universities based in 38 capital cities. We are based in the center of Brussels, and we've been, again, very active in the last 15 years on the topic of doctoral education. It is really key for UNICA members, this topic. We've been debating about the quality of supervision during PhD education, the transition between the master's degree and the PhD, the employability of doctorate holders. This is so important because we know that actually, doing the doctorate, it is possible to achieve really very important skills, not only hard skills, but also the important soft skills that are so important in the society nowadays. And, so doctorate holders, they do have many opportunities in the society, but very often, I mean, the education is aimed basically, as a majority of the cases towards the academic career only, and then the transition from the academic career to other career opportunities in the society can be also sometimes a bit painful for the doctorate holders themselves. So we try our best also to discuss these topics to make sure that in our UNICA universities, everyone is updated on that. And today we have really a great panel of experts, starting with Alexander Hasgar, the head of the UA Council for Doctoral Education. And I want to thank very much Chaperone, that is the organization we are cooperating today for this event. And of course, Eurodoc, a very well-known actor in the sector. And then we have an expert from Karolinska Institute also giving us, some information about the career development of doctoral candidates at Karolinska. I want to thank very much Carmela Calessa. She's the former Vice Rector for International Relations and member of the UNICA Steering Committee. She's going to lead the activities of UNICA, this important theme of doctoral education. So thank you very much, Carmela. And of course, many thanks also to Laura Brossico and in general the Secretariat for working so hard in this difficult period. Many thanks also to all the participants. I see that you are numerous today, and I wish to all of you a very pleasant and fruitful event. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Luciano. I am very glad to be leading these events as a member of the steering committee of UNICA, because indeed doctoral candidates nowadays face a very competitive world, but I am not sure whether we as higher education institutions, we are providing all the needs that our PhD candidates are going to face, not only in academia, of course, we are very experts on that, but also in other aspects of their careers. And well, we have good examples today, as I will be presenting every panelists today. We will see that they have evolved from PhD, their PhD candidacies and careers and scientific careers to alternative and different careers that I'm sure they have been, or they are being very successful, because they had learned and they have been inside what the research activities and methods, etc. So we in UNICA we aim to really address and discuss and make a platform of reflection and of thinking about what are the needs from candidates, and also what are the needs for institutions to provide their valuable candidates, because that the PhD candidates in a university are a population that is extremely important. That they are the future of the universities, but the future of the society as well. So we want to provide this series of webinars starting today. There will be along this 2022 just born at least three webinars. And Laura is looking at me like, no, we said 3. Okay, so 3 webinars. Today we start by the impact of international experience in the academic careers of doctoral candidates, a very important topic that is going on in the higher education institutions. We know that we have to provide internationalization, and 2 others that will be announced on time with career management skills, as our president was saying, why we need them, and how we can develop them as doctoral candidates, and also a webinar dedicated to analyze what careers are beyond academia. And I think that with this perspective and this first webinar, we should be starting. So let me introduce our first speaker, that we are really very happy to have him with us, Dr. Alexander Hasgar, who's hi. I'm sorry I couldn't say hello before. I had many problems of communication, so I had to join to be in another place to have good communication. So thank you for coming and joining us, Alexander. It's a real pleasure and a real honor. Alexander is a head of the European University Association Council for Doctoral Education. As you know, is the largest European network in this field, and therefore the Doctoral Education Council is the higher and the biggest European network in this field. It covers 36 countries and brings together over 250 universities that award, of course, PhD doctoral degrees. He has a big experience on programs on research evaluation in the social sciences and humanities, which is a very important subject, because we always think about it's easy, the internationalization, maybe perhaps joining different labs in different parts of the world in the very scientific PhD fields, but I think that your view is extremely valuable. Of course, he holds a doctorate in the University of Zurich, but he knows very well how internationalization works for a PhD, because himself had research residence in Argentina, which I suspect then that you speak Spanish. I hope to have the opportunity to exchange thoughts and ideas in Spanish. And also he has been very active in an NGO sector, so also in Latin America. So I think that Alexander is a real pleasure and honor to have you today here. He's going to talk about internationalization as a strategic priority of doctoral education and the impact that this has in early stage researchers. The screen is yours, Alexander. Thank you very much.
Hello, Carmela, dear participants, dear all. It's indeed a great pleasure to be here. And of course, we could also speak a bit Spanish and I could talk about my doctorate, but I'm not invited for that here. But indeed, it's quite interesting having myself had actually this international experience and also knowing wherever you are, how the different contexts are. And if something I really have learned also myself is being in different parts of the world, one thing that you always learn is the research and the topic we are working on, but often you learn even more about systems and about approach to research, and also about how university identify themselves and what means to be in a university in different settings. So probably the first point to address about internationalization is that it's really worth to think what are the different dimensions, and especially when you are yourself early stage researchers, what is really what you are learning here. But to go into this, I have produced a little PowerPoint. Now I have a little second, please. Somehow it's not here. Sorry, I had a little technical issue here. I'm just coming back. Yes, here. Okay, so yes, internationalization, a strategic priority of doctoral education and the impact of early stage researchers, a very long topic, but I really try only to talk 10-15 minutes, so we really have time to hear the other panelists and especially to talk, and you are always welcome to stop me in case, even being a Swiss, I'm bad in time keeping. I don't hope that. So just to say where I'm coming from, yes, EUACDE, this is a bit shorter than the full name, is a membership service of the European University Association. We're actually now indeed the largest network here. Mostly when we speak about doctoral education, it's of course the doctorate, but we're also more and more also looking postdoctoral research. And also when we speak about internationalization, it's also the different elements. It's not only for the doctorate, but also what happens before. We're working on policies, organizing events, and we really try to approach doctoral education in the different dimension we have here, starting with research integrity, research assessment, open science, collaboration, career development, and so on. So this, for us, each of these webinars of the 3 you are planning now are for extreme interesting because they all fit very well what we are working on. So when we speak about the doctoral education, and please leave me a little bit to be a historian here without giving a history lecture, of course, actually the international dimension is at the beginning of the doctorate. Doctorate being the oldest degree was actually a degree based on the idea that you get a license, actually, docere, to teach in different universities. So the doctorate never has been a degree that fits only to a certain institutional context or even a national context, but the idea that being having a doctorate means a recognition in very different parts of the world, not only where you have studied. It had actually been an important element since the beginning, and it's staying also important. And when we go into the modern doctorate, and I have here actually two books, two dissertations. First was left the first dissertation at University of Berlin, which is probably one of the real first dissertation ever made. This idea, a doctorate is not anymore about teaching and being a teacher, but really about research. And the other, also an element of internationalization, the very famous thesis of Marie Curie, which when you look at her history, is also a history of internationalization of research until today. Now, where we are here, so maybe a little bit of the context. So most universities in Europe are now institutions where there is structural doctoral education, and this doctoral education is extremely diverse, which is also a speciality of doctoral education in this continent. So between France and Finland and Spain and Austria and Georgia, you will see very different approaches to the doctorate, related also to duration. However, there is also something which is really common for the doctorate, and there is the idea that the doctoral candidates are early stage researchers, and the research is in the center of the doctorate. So doctoral education is not only what happens into one institution. There are commonalities in the way what it's aimed to, and also increasingly we see now the common understanding that the doctorate is related, and this Professor Sasso said already, for careers being within or without of universities. Now, when we look international mobility of doctoral candidates in Europe, we have some numbers of Eurostats here, shows in many places the doctorate is the most international degree, related also to the bachelor and master. You are going to see countries, and these are numbers for 2016, probably the degree is even higher now, even despite of COVID in some countries. So you will find places where about 40–50% of the doctoral candidates have a background from abroad. However, and this is something we can also discuss, there are big differences between countries in Europe. So countries where you may have 1% from abroad, others 50%. And when we speak more now about the policy level and what it means actually for Europe, we need also to discuss what this means and what impact this has also on careers and on academic careers of early stage researchers. Now, when we speak about institutional approach, and I try here more to represent the institutional approach of universities, we just published, or we are going to publish actually in around 2 months, a survey where we asked our member last year, what are the priorities in doctoral education? Now, this is of course the worst slide to share because it's quite challenging to read. We therefore also added another slide here, and here we asked our members. So we had a lot of universities from most of the member countries of UACD asking what are the maximum three, four, some only mention 1 or 2 priorities. What do you think is the most important in your institution? And this actually was even a little bit surprising for us, because it is clear that the quality of supervision is always extremely high in the list of priorities, and it's really in the core of the doctorate. The second is the funding of doctoral candidates, which is also a topic on its own, because it shows us that in many European countries, we see a challenge here that doctoral candidates may have issues to being funded, but this is maybe another discussion. But then number 3 has been, we want to enable our own doctoral candidates having this international experience. And number 5 from the priorities were attracting doctoral candidates from abroad. And even co-tutels, and I will talk later quite long about co-tutels, for 20% of institutions, this is the top priority. So the question of doctoral candidates mobility, the question also of joint doctorate is very high actually in the list of priorities, much higher than other issues like, for instance, digitalization or many more. And this shows that this, of course, webinar is very well timed, but it also shows that we need to discuss together how we can enable this experience, which are seen as considered so important. Now, why this is the case, there may be different reasons. One certainly is that research itself is becoming increasingly global. The idea we have global problems, and COVID has been one of them, but we see we cannot get anywhere if we are not collaborating. And if we say doctoral candidates are really in the center of the research endeavors, and a lot of research projects would not even happen if there were not doctoral candidates being part of. Here we see a clear interest to becoming global. We have also new technologies which make it easier to internationalize, like also this webinar today, which of course it's also, and it's worth to discuss to what degree even this is what we are doing now as part of internationalizing us by having these exchanges. So this idea that internationalization has also, and this is, I'm sure for many of the doctoral candidates and early stage researchers in this webinar, very important, that exposure to different research environments and culture, having different additional skills is an important element of your professional development, but also by developing a critical mindset. So seeing that you work differently in other contexts is a value itself. So it's not only the concrete skills, but it's also the full immersion and the holistic approach to experience. And then we see, and this is also a little bit of a consequence of that, that internationalization is a part of the institutional and national strategy. So how do we define internationalization? Maybe this is also not bad to talk about that. So one of the very popular definitions is von Hans de Witt and colleagues, who says internationalization is the intentional process of integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purpose, functions, and delivery of post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff and to make a meaningful contribution to society. This is also the only thing I will read loud from the slides. This is about students, also not only doctorates, but I highlighted 4 terms here. First of all, it's intentional. So when we speak about internationalization, there is a reflection behind it. There is a goal, there is a will. We should not forget, research is per se international and internationalized. But when we speak about internationalization, there is this effort. Second is to integrating, not separating the research also. So especially when early stage researchers, for instance, is mobile, has an international experience. It's not something separated from what you do at home, especially not if it should be something meaningful. It makes things better. It increases the quality. You get something of this. And also it contributes actually also to a bigger goal. And this is especially important when we speak later about sustainability and the fact that nowadays if we want to justify also the travel behind internationalization, we need to think, what are the contributions? And again, this can be on an individual level, talking about critical thinking, for instance, but this contribution then also translate into a more societal value. So to give an example about this co-tutels, and I'm sure many of you have heard this term. So co-tutel is usually a doctoral project where there is an agreement between 2 institutions, usually universities, to provide a joint doctorate. But the particular thing is that you have supervisors from different universities, and that you have also some agreement and some mechanisms that you can really work into universities, and then also you have a degree. Now the big question is, should it be 1 diploma or 2, 1 logo, 2 logo? But the idea is that you integrate actually 2 universities and the work of 2 universities into one doctoral project. And now the question is, and if you remember the slide before, why is this so important? And we had actually just finished now the work of what we call a thematic peer group. So one working group of CD works on this, and we will also have a report on this coming out in the next months. But when we looked into it, what are the interests of it? So we see on one hand, co-tutels are important for doctoral candidates. It gives them an exposure to different academic environments and working styles. And again, to repeat, there is not the research, there is not the university or the career. So if we talk about academic career, to know that universities work differently is one of the key experience you can have and the key skills you need, because the future of the institution will be differently. And when you are mobile, you need to be aware of these kind of differences. But at the same time, we speak about access to better research equipment and facilities. We should not forget that especially in some areas of science, you will not always have the same equipment in everything in your own institution. Then the international networking, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. I don't need to talk so much about this, but networks are built with personal contacts. It can also be virtually, but it needs to be with a regular exchange. Okay, not so long. Then gaining additional training experiences, getting degree that it's recognized and so on. And for the university, it's really this idea that institutions gain by collaborating with some partners, and it's increasing the research capacity. So what question is, what we need to discuss actually is, what do we consider an international experience? As I said, since research is always international, but also how do we recognize it? And one important aspect is, on one hand, life is much easier if you have everywhere the same, but the value of internationalization is that you don't have always the same. So when we talk about formal or informal recognition, this is an important aspect. The question is also, and here we are back to the assessment, how can you assess international experience? There is not a number like publications, but when we look into the value of research assessment is, and the fact that universities are changing research assessment, we need to find ways how to make this more visible. And now I wanted to talk more about assessment, but I won't do it. So I will end actually with the question of sustainability. And here we need to look, how can we make more sustainable? Not everybody is able to travel. So how can we actually ensure diversity and avoid facts that only a group of people can travel, for instance? So should international experience be one element of your profile? But this is also important. It's not about everybody needs to go 15 months to universities, otherwise you don't get a job of academia, because then we would actually do the same thing we did with research publication by just looking into one. How can we ensure brain circulation, that people, it's not always going on internationalization from A to B, but people are more exchanging related to capacity increasement. And the last point is the greening. We have a challenge with climate change. We cannot take the value for traveling for granted. We all know, and most stakeholders would agree, virtuality cannot replace the personal experience, but we need a common debate. What makes sense and how can we make it more meaningful? So not abolishing internationalization or mobility, but how can we have the biggest value of it if we invest, being it money or being it also carbon monoxide. And for the end, I would like to invite all of you to your personal little internationalization. We are going to have the UACD annual meeting June about time and timing. And originally we wanted to have time and space. So wanted also to have the international area or the spatial element of doctoral education, which is very important, connected to internationalization, but then it became too philosophical. So we stay with timing, with duration of the doctorate, with planning of programs. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Alexander. Very interesting. Looking so much forward for the report of the EUA. That will be, of course, always so inspiring and so informative. I mean, the data are, I was puzzled by some data that you presented, I must say. So I think that would deserve indeed some discussion, and of course of this event in Manchester. But let's go on, and well, the speakers. Next one is Joanna Moscoso. Joanna is speaking from Chaperone, this interesting company that is helping and assessing and giving support to scientists, high quality and personalized career support, as she puts it. She's an enthusiast about science and about bringing her scientific experience to the society. Really, she was promoted. She actually founded a non-profit organization that connects children and scientists. That's fantastic, to promote science literacy and reduce inequality. So a very important thing as well. She is a bacteriologist, if I understand well. She did her PhD in Imperial College in London, And she has had a very fruitful scientific career, and now she is working in this innovative company that is Chaperone, and she will tell us what does internationalization, because she has experience having supported some scientists to promote their careers. So what does internationalization, or the lack of it, mean to academic research and researchers? So Joanna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you can see my screen.
We do.
Cool.
Thank you.
And yes, indeed, I'll be talking about internationalization of researchers and research. The first time I came across with the possibility of having an international academic experience, I was 9 years old. I had just completed primary school. It was summer, and I was with my parents having dinner at home. Again, I was 9 years old. It was a regular summer night. And at some point, my dad asked me, Joanna, do you want to go abroad to study? Do you want to go to England or to the US? And 4 things happened after that sentence. First immediate thought was, why are you asking this? You want to get rid of me? I'm just 9 years old. Second immediate thought was, where is England? Is this a country? Then I replied, no, thank you. I'm fine here. And the 4th thing that happened was that I never forgot that moment. On that day, that time, I understood that my hometown, Valença, a rural place in the middle of green mountains in the north of Portugal, was not my limit. The world was my limit, and I had the power to decide where I wanted to go and when I wanted to go. So I did this, and eventually at the age of 20, I did leave Portugal. At the age of 18, I left my hometown to go study at the university. Then had an Erasmus experience in Sweden, then did my master's in Australia, did my PhD in the United Kingdom, and then relocated back to Portugal, eventually to start my own line of research. Not only I lived, during a long time in these countries, I also had shorter stays in other countries like France, Switzerland, and Germany. And all of this thanks to fellowships that I applied for and I was granted. But let's talk about internationalization. What does it mean for academic research and for researchers to be international? I will reflect on the meaning of the word and its meaning in the different sectors of activity in society. And then to understand its meaning and impact for academia, I'll go through a collection of views and impressions from a range of researchers at different levels of their career and from different fields of science. So let's think about the definition and the meaning of the word. It derives from the word international, as we all know, which means existing, occurring, or carried on by or between different nations. And its use has been increasing over the time. According to Google, you can clearly see that there is an exponential growth at some point, some decades ago, and the word became more and more used. Now, what does it mean in different sectors of society? In business, for example, internationalization is the action of expanding the company or the product or the service of the company to other places. And is often described as an improvisation process, which is strongly affected by cultural tastes, preferences, and traditions. In branding and marketing, International brands or international marketing means tailoring a product or a service to the new market. It could be a new region or a new country. And global marketing or branding means providing the exact same product or service to different markets. Just included here some examples. KitKat, wherever you go, it's the same. It's made of the same, it's exactly the same. It's made with the same raw materials, the same process, the same name everywhere. While the ice cream, depends on where you are from, the ice cream brand changes. It's an international brand and it adapts to every country where it is marketed. Then in sports, internationalization is influenced by the transfer of athletes and the integration of foreign athletes, the geographical reach and expansion of the sport itself, the visibility or projection of the sports club or the team. For example, in Barcelona, we have Barça, which is very popular, versus a local sports club. The competition setup, how structured are the competitions? Are there regional, national, and international competitions? Is the sport represented in the Olympic Games? And then it's also influenced by the fans and the sponsors. And an example here, for example, typically the fans of a football club can be quite different from the fans of Formula One, for example. And now going into the topic that interests us the most, which is academia. In academia, internationalization is influenced by the collaborations and network that a researcher has. And of course, these has an impact on the publications. And there is actually, in terms of publications, an increasing number of multi-authored papers with authors belonging to different institutions and to institutions in different countries. Then it's also influenced by the number of foreign or visiting researchers, or even the number of student programs that are international and that the institution has. It's also influenced by the perceived relevance of the field of research. For example, today there is a great appetite all over the world for virology. In the past, we've seen a great appetite for cancer research and so on. It's also influenced by the visibility and even prestige of a university, research institution, or research group. For example, Harvard University has a lot of visibility compared to other least known universities. It's also influenced by the science communication setup around the specific area of research. Are there international conferences or not? Is the field considered attractive to the media? For example, in relation to space science, the media has very high interest. And so scientists and internationalization takes a different approach here in terms of science communication. And of course, then there is also the online tools for science communication, blogs, social media channels that can give more or less visibility and the edge of internationalization to researchers and the research itself. And of course, in academia, internationalization is also influenced by the funding available, both to the researcher and to the institution. The number of calls that are opened every year, the frequency of these calls, the predictability of these opportunities are all very key to promote international research and researchers. Moving on, we consider the Chaperone that the best way to actually know what internationalization means to researchers and research was to ask scientists themselves what their experience was. So we've asked 8 people from different fields at different stages of the career about this. And according to their answers, we could identify these 7 categories that are shown here at the top. And we'll go through them now. So a professor of linguistics and a professor of molecular biology, when they were asked about this internationalization, they all considered that it had a huge impact on their career and life. Alain Fidou, for example, he says that there are, of course, different levels to this topic, and it depends a lot in which labs or research groups you have been through. But overall, like you can have internationalization, but if your training is not good, that it's not so useful. And that training of high quality is important and helps you also approach science with different culture. For example, rigor, creativity, or resilience. And it's not exactly the same country in every country where you can be. Then Patrick, for example, highlights that each experience that he had abroad gave him wonderful opportunities to learn from his peers and the leading researchers in his field. So here again, the quality of the training that he was able to get through internationalization. Of course, he then highlights that he's very grateful to the funders who enabled him to do this, as otherwise he wouldn't be able to afford it. And he also says that the benefits were not just academic, and you realize things about your home country, or you need to deal with problems like the aging parents in your home country that can arise at some point, and also the travel restrictions, for example, now during the pandemic, which means that it's very challenging to go meet your loved ones. But all in all, he thinks that he would haven't done anything differently. Alain, beyond the science, says that internationalization opens your mind, makes you more adventurous, less shy, and always looking forward for new challenges. However, this might not be the case if you're looking for security and well-being in one single place. But he does feel that he would have been someone different if he had not done the international career. Then we're going to go through the testimonial of Vicky, professor in molecular microbiology. And she says that at the time of her PhD, and this was 1984, I wasn't even born, so it was a long time ago, the perceived wisdom was that you had to go somewhere to do your postdoctoral work, preferably abroad, if you wanted to get a position in academia in the UK. So she was in the UK at that time. Therefore, her path was set to consider a postdoc abroad. Her original plan was to go to West Berlin, as it was called at the time, but this morphed into going to Umeå in the north of Sweden. So she arrived there in 1985, intending to stay for just 1 year, and the rest is history. She ended up staying there, and she's still there. She says that the department had only a few international postdocs at that time, but it was easy to assimilate into because all seminars and all meetings were and still are held in English. This was deliberate, both as an aid to further international recruitment and to provide Swedish students and scientists with forums to practice for international events. Internationalization of the department and its teaching happened fast, and currently over 50% of the group leaders where she is are non-native Swedes. We also collected testimonials from people who have managed to have very successful careers by not going abroad. And here we bring Anna and Ugo. So Anna says that she doesn't think that the lack of a stay abroad to conduct research has had a negative impact on her career or scientific productivity. However, she does think that the experience of reading and doing research abroad is valued by funding bodies, and in this regard, compared to others who did research abroad, she does think that she is in disadvantage. Hugo follows up saying that having research experience abroad is very valued, especially by funding agencies. However, you can also do great research if you don't go abroad, and this research can be international too if you have collaborations with research groups abroad, or if you participate in international conferences and discuss your research internationally. He had never excluded the possibility of doing research abroad. It just didn't, there was no reason to go abroad. And by staying in, he says that he gained much respect by his colleagues at his institution. Rita pretty much agrees with this. She actually intended to do part of her PhD and postdoc abroad in the US and Italy, but then she ended up not doing it because she had other opportunities locally. And she agrees that not going abroad does not mean that she doesn't have international experience or that she doesn't discuss science with international leaders, as she's been to countless of international conferences and has published with authors from 11 institutions abroad. So she's very actively engaging with institutions abroad. We're reaching the end, and now researchers Mario and Abdu highlight other aspects of internationalization. Mario, for example, says that the connections he established through the work were probably the most important outcome for his career, especially when he weights the connections versus the publications in relation to internationalization. He does recognize, though, that it takes a lot of hard work. You need to be willing to embrace the differences and to be flexible enough to adapt to the changing cultural and scientific realities. And Abdu highlights that his internationalization is a reflection of his passion for science, combined with the available opportunities. And he talks about mobility between research fields, countries and continents, and also labs within the same institution. He also highlights that it doesn't have to be the same for everyone, because there is not one unique career pathway that you can follow, but multiple possible ways to do your career. Finally, lecturer Gunnar, he says that studying and working in different countries and places impacted a lot who he is as a person and as an academic. He talks about gaining the confidence to go abroad and live abroad, to mastering language skills by working in countries where you speak English as a native language, and again, the network, the invaluable and international network of friends and colleagues that you can build and rely on for information, advice, and collaboration when you move around different countries. He then just says that this experience widened his horizons in terms of approaches to learning and teaching, but also to organization and management of research labs, institutes, and science systems. Of course, his intercultural competence, this very important skill, he has improved. And working with international teams, it's always, he finds it very enjoyable. And it also, the different backgrounds also bring the different ways to problem solving and to work making teams more effective. So all in all, when you put together all this feedback, you see that excellence is at the top. You know, people move because they want excellent training and excellent research. Then the people also mention the impact that it has on your personal life. And finally, the funding, how important it is, and also your personal motivations to go abroad. And then the language benefits and the international research. Just to conclude, and also bridging these testimonials with my own experience, I did it for personal reasons. I really wanted to go abroad and meet new people, different cultures, be a little bit everywhere in the world. So I always went abroad because I really wanted to go abroad. And then I wanted to get the best training I could, so for excellence as well. Of course, you know, doing this was only possible because I was able to get the funding. And the outcomes this had on me was, of course, it shaped my personal life. It improved my language skills, especially my English skills, the networking, a very powerful network that I was able to build, and also carrying out international research, and my papers indeed reflect that. So a little bit like Alexander, this was also a bit of a reflection exercise because it's important actually to think about what does it mean to be an international researcher, to do international research, to be an international researcher, or to have an international experience, and how you can make the most out of it, and how they can exist without each other or together, and how higher education institutions are managing all these aspects of internationalization. Vicky in 1985 talked about international experience as perceived wisdom, but now it's much more than that, and it's indeed a strategic goal of many, many institutions. So how can we, what has changed over these more than 30 years, and what has been done to maximize the positive impacts of internationalization? So all questions for us to discuss later on. Thank you very much. I will leave my LinkedIn and Chaperone links on the chat so that you can visit our webpage and learn more about what we do.
That's great, Joanna. Thank you so much. This very interesting view, the cold definitions and descriptions of what is the internationalization versus the personal aspects of not only you, that definitely has probably had the greatest impact, right, in your life, but also of other scientists. So we are a bit short of time now. We should go on. So let me introduce Agnieszka Zira. I'm sorry about my pronunciation. I don't speak Polish, Agnieszka. So the president of the European Council for Doctoral Candidates and Junior Researchers, EuroDoc. She's in the field of mechanical engineering. In Krakow University, a fantastic historical university. So please, the floor is yours, and let's carry on. Thank you very much, Agnieszka, for being with us today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello to everyone. It's a great honor for me to be here with you. Today I'm representing EuroDoc, so European Council of Doctoral Candidates and Junior Researchers. In the meanwhile, I will try to share my presentation. Please confirm if you can see it.
We do. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So briefly about EuroDoc. EuroDoc is a non-profit umbrella organization which have inside 29 national associations representing doctoral candidates, but also ERICA researchers, so also postdocs from 26 countries. So we are quite international organization, which is really nice because we've got views from basically.
Excuse me, Agnieszka. Yeah, we are seeing not in the presentation form, so we are only in the first slide. I don't know whether you are.
Yes. That's okay.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to add a few words about. That's okay.
Sorry about interrupting.
That's perfectly okay. So today I will try to present some views coming from Eurodoc as an organization, basically also from our national organizations, which are located in different European countries. So I started with the questions, with the question if the mobility is important for ERICA researchers. And we'll say, of course, yes, but as also Alexander and Joanna mentioned before, we shouldn't force people to, let's say, to do these mobility actions as long-term actions, because sometimes, as Alexander mentioned, it's impossible because of the many reasons. So for sure, the geographical mobility enables wide and balanced circulation of talents and also access to research facilities, infrastructures, and also it helps us to make important progress. It also helps with our scientific improvement, and also it helps to learn how to be flexible and open-minded. So it is really good, and of course for us really important. However, here on the graph you can see the major effects of entire mobility experience of the research career, and as you can see,
sorry,
Agnieszka, we don't see it,
but we are not seeing the slides. Yeah, if you can switch to the presentation mode, and
maybe
because we can also see the list on the left. So the first one, and
that's strange. So it doesn't change. Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Presentation mode.
Yeah, but I've got presentation mode, so that is.
You have so maybe
strange.
Maybe now you have it has changed.
Okay, so maybe
now there's a graph, right?
Yeah, there was a graph.
Okay, great.
So maybe now it's okay.
I mean, now we see a graph, but I don't know. Can you change the next one just to see whether it changes in the screen? It has not changed. Can you put next a slide?
Yes, I did.
Oh, it hasn't changed. No. So
there is a suggestion in the chat that you need to share the whole screen and not just.
Okay. Maybe I will try to.
Sorry, we tried this in the test session and it worked. So
I am very sorry for
now
this.
It's fine.
Yeah,
perfect.
now it
perfect.
works. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So sorry for that. Okay, so the main point things were international contacts, also networking, advanced research skills, and collaboration with other subfields of research. Of course, there were more good effects which were pointed during this survey, but that was the most commonly pointed. However, while talking about mobility, we should also think about possibilities of intersectoral mobility, because such thing also exists, and I think we don't do it often. This intersectoral mobility helps to gain better knowledge and basically to change knowledge between the industry, for example, business, and the university. Also, it helps to have the wider set of research-related skills, which is extremely important. And of course, matching academic research results to the needs outside academia. The problem which is pointed also during consultations with our NAs was that we've got still problem to try to make our research results public, but except public, to do it in such a way that the society will understand the importance of our research and will understand also our results. So I would say it's kind of science communication, which is also very important for us as ethical researchers and for all the academic community. Nowadays, it's impossible not to point the influence of pandemic situation across the world. The question is if here are the identified problems which occurred during the pandemic situation, especially for ethical researchers, also affecting the mobility issues, which was also mentioned before. The question is if we are all ready for other, I don't know, pandemic, maybe for other restrictions, and how with the knowledge we already have, if we are ready to handle it, and if it will be easier or it still will be quite messy in kind of areas of not only mobility but also in the areas of doctoral candidates, doctoral education. So the problem was with the mobility actions. So the lockdown for sure interrupted and stopped the mobility across countries. And sometimes these activities, which was already mentioned also, were mandatory requirement for PhD defense. And the problem was that there was a huge, and people has huge problems with this issue, where it was mandatory. The second thing was connected to EU research fundings. Of course, we are the beneficiaries for EU research fundings, but the problem was that there were some limitations and requirements during having the contracts. Sometimes it was really hard to change the agreement between the institution, and sometimes also doctoral candidates and postdocs had problems with gaining this funding. So that was also a significant problem. Of course, the pandemic situation's influence of the lower productivity and increased precarity. So it was really hard for ethical researchers, and also because of the research institutions and universities and research agencies knew the problem of cutting, and they tried to provide the possibility of these contracts and project extensions. The question is if such as solutions will be in the contracts for the future, if such a problem, because such a problems may also occur in the coming years. The problem which was also identified were the barriers in doctoral trainings. Sometimes, for example, doctoral candidates and also postdocs had to visit personally the laboratories. Also, they need to work at the university, which was the problem. Sometimes many doctoral candidates had to reschedule or revise their research plans because they were not allowed to end their training because of the closed laboratories and similar issues. Also, some institutions and programs required an international committee to approve, for example, the thesis, and the bureaucracy which unfortunately occurred might be complicated while moving to the final examination online. There were also problems identified with the supervision, which was also mentioned before, because basically during this time, the higher education institutions were focused on students and researchers, which were holding the permanent contracts. And the problem was with the doctoral candidates being sometimes left behind because they've got temporary contracts, for example. And because of that, many remote working doctoral candidates highlighted the lack of interaction with supervisions and mentors, which obviously affects their work, the quality of their work. Also, talking about postdocs, they feel an increased pressure from supervisors to produce results and publish because, for example, they couldn't access the laboratories in the wake of possible funding cuts and grim career prospects. So the next identified thing was that and it still is a problem that there are differences between the contracts of postdocs, for example, which are completely different from normal academic teachers. For example, working at the universities, they don't have the same social benefits, for example, and the other benefits, which also affects their stability at the universities. Also, the lack of an adequate working environment was identified because as the doctoral candidates and postdocs couldn't enter the new universities, they need to work remotely. And it was also really hard because, for example, some of them didn't have proper space to work remotely. Also, there were a problem with border between working and private time, which was identified really often during this time. And also the lack of interaction and collaboration with colleagues was also a concern for remote working for early career researchers. The last thing which I wanted to mention was the increased sense of isolation and anxiety, which basically affected, and it was a serious impact on early career researchers' mental health. Of course, we know about these problems, that mental health is really important also for early career researchers. However, we identified within the Eurodoc that basically only few countries has a kind of support agencies, or there is the possibility to easy access the professional mental health help from the university, but other countries basically don't have any support according to professional mental health support, any agencies, or it is really hard, or it's almost impossible to access any professional doctor or any professional mental health help. So it is also really important issue for the future. So the question is if we have solutions for all these mentioned problems, and if we are ready for probably the next hard time which may occur, and if we will do it better than we did before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka, and you have kept on time. We are very behind the schedule, but thank you very much. And I think you raised important points and questions that we will discuss later on. So our last speaker is Isla De Pape from Karolinska Institute. She's a bioscience engineer, and she was a PhD at Karolinska. Then she went abroad, but now she's the career program manager at Karolinska Institute Career Service and a professional coach. And she's a very international person, as she puts in her bio. So she will talk to us about international experience, what's in a name, big and small opportunities. Isla, whenever you want. Thank you.
Thank you. So the sharing should be happening. Hope that is all going well. Please interrupt me.
Here we are.
So yes, perfect. So yes, my name is Isla. I'm career program manager at Karolinska Institute at the moment. I'll quickly have like a very small introduction to what that means, because you might be from anywhere and not have any idea what that is. And as you know, multiple speakers have mentioned, like the situation of like how research is done, how doctoral education is done, how career works is different everywhere. Every organization, every university or research institute, and in every country and within the legal system that country has as a framework. So this is more like examples of how it's going in KI, Karolinska Institutet in Sweden, and maybe you're part of an organization and you find some inspiration, or you realize that, hey, we're also doing some of this, maybe we can advertise it in a different way so that more people know it or collaborate or whatever it is. Or maybe you're here as a doctoral student yourself and you can figure out if some of these initiatives exist at your organization, because it might well be that your university offers way more in options than that you are aware of. So yeah, that's a bit of the idea. Also, like, I was thinking, like, what is enough of an international experience to be mentioned? So I'll be talking about a bunch of different things. But so this is, you know, I took a Google Maps of Europe. So that's where Karolinska Institutet is located. It's basically a one faculty university, meaning that we only have medical related things, 9 different areas, 22 different departments, and research ranging from very basic molecular structural things that, you know, might not see a patient or patient's direct relevance in the next 50 years, to extremely, like, you know, in the clinics, research of changing, yeah, operation procedures on patients. About the people, like, there's lots of stuff behind this, but if we're now talking like who is all of this for at the university, except for society, of course, is that there's about 6,000 bachelor and master students at any moment, about 2,000 doctoral students, about 1,000 postdocs, and about 300 professors. So just to put the sizing of it. But for now, we will focus on the doctoral education and what the options are there. So as I mentioned, like, what is an international experience? And, like, you know, the first thing was, like, you know, do you have examples or numbers of, like, exchange that is done between, like, doctoral students from Karolinska who go somewhere else, and how long and how often? But that is really just, in our view, like a very small part of what it is. And there's a lot of infrastructure that might be needed for that, and it's not always possible. So, so I'm gonna try to sketch like a bit of a broader view. So I decided to go for scheduling it like on the journey of a doctoral student at KI. And, you know, as mentioned already, a PhD education looks different in different places. At KI, it's 4 years, and you get paid for it. It's an education and employment. And you're definitely supposed to do research. You're also supposed to take some courses and other things, and I'll mention that. So there's a bit of things that are like pre-PhD that make international, there's done during the PhD, and then there's some post-PhD that makes international opportunities. And I've kind of organized them in, as you see in the top, unavoidable. So it might be that it's mandatory or that it's just like, you know, the way the surroundings is. And it's kind of thinking of like, even if you wanted to come in and really very much did not want to have an international experience, you're gonna not be able to avoid these ones as a doctoral student, so unavoidable. And then we've got the blue ones is more like strategic and supportive initiatives. So it's more like things that the university is organizing and collaboration and contacts and like might need more money and time and political influencing. So it might be on a different level. And then there's I'm going to mention a lot of opportunities that are not inherently an international experience, but you have a choice to make them an international experience. So if you are a doctoral student, then you can consider doing the things that you're going to do anyway in an international way, if that is important to you. So first of all, unavoidable is that Karolinska Institute is a very multicultural international environment. Here, just a couple of numbers. It's often hard to find because like, what do we even, you know, identify as a doctoral student from abroad? Like, do you need to have, do you mean the nationality or where you're born or like these kind of things? So this is just some examples. It's a graph of showing the amount of doctoral students that start every year that are considered international by a central Swedish body that keeps track of statistics. But here again, it's like, you know, is it based on the passport that you hold, or is it based on where you did your master's degree, which is often what KI uses because of discrimination reasons. We're not allowed to ask for a lot of like, what is your nationality or what's your cultural background? But we can see where the master's degree was received from. But, you know, people come already international experience for a master and then continue for a PhD. So, you know, the numbers are quite difficult. But the general idea is that it's about 45% of PhD students at KI that have non-Swedish nationality or non-Swedish background. So quite international. No matter what you do, you're going to have people in your group. You might be led by a group leader who is not Swedish. So that's one thing. Then it is a requirement of doctoral education at KI that you need to present at least one international conference. Your research, that is. So that could be a poster presentation or that could be an oral presentation. So it's part of your education and you get, it is recognized in credits. So part of it is that you need to get 30 like educational credits to be able to finish your PhD. And so you can apply for credits based on the presentations that you do. And it's kind of an incentive to do it. Like, even if you wouldn't be interested, or sometimes the situation is even if maybe your supervisor doesn't feel that you should spend time on doing this international experience, well, you need it to defend and you get credits for it. So it will lead to you being able to finish your PhD, which is important. Then, so those were like the unavoidable. And then there's a bunch of optional. For example, as mentioned, the research visits and exchange. So it's not mandatory to do an international research exchange, but it is definitely an option. Here are some results from the exit poll, just to show that it's about 40% of PhDs at KI that at the end of their PhD experience say that they've had this kind of international exchange, and then mostly Europe and North America. It's optional activity, but again, if you do this kind of exchange, be it national or international, you get credits for it. So that's again a reason why, you know, it might be, you might use it as an argument for doing it. Then we have international and collaborative courses. So you need to take a couple of courses. Again, you need to have enough credits, study points to defend. And some of these courses are organized internationally, and like parts are in different countries. So if you apply for the course and you're part of the course, you will have international experiences that way. Also, you can get courses that you take anywhere else approved to count for your PhD credits if they are within the right field. So it's an opportunity if you find a course in a different country that is very relevant for your topic to take that and then use the credits for defending at Karolinska. Then you need to have 2 publications to be able, peer-reviewed, to be able to defend your PhD. So that's also different between different places. You might have a requirement of publishing or no requirement at all. And KI, you do 2 of them. And of course, you know, they can be totally not international, but KI does a lot of publishing that is international. So you could have collaborators that you work with, or because you're working on data from another country and in that way have an international link. So I don't know these numbers for like specifically the ones that are published by PhD students, but there's so many and there's lots of publishing happening through PhD students. And on KI wide, 70% of KI's publications have international authors, so with international institutions. And between 2018 and 2020, that was a total of about 170 different countries that were involved in publishing with KI. So it's very, very international in that way. Then also when you defend your PhD, you need to, it's a public defense and there is an opponent and a committee. And you generally invite a big person in the field. And that can be, of course, an international person. It's a good opportunity if you're going to have somewhere a big shot being there to discuss your research with, then that is often international. So that's a way to get exposed, and it's also often used as a way to network for possible postdocs if that is the way that you want to continue. So opportunity to create international links. And then the more strategic, more like, you know, long-term systemic things is, for example, international recruitment. I mean, it's one thing to be like, yeah, you know, if the best candidate is international, then we will invite them. But it's also like, you know, is there any support needed? For example, you know, do group leaders really feel secure in getting someone in from a different country if it's maybe not clear about the visas and all these kind of things? Like, is that going to hold back recruitment of international PhD students and in that way hold back the internationalization of your local environment? So there might be a need for international staff services, which there probably is. Often it's there and just not known by the people who might need it. So if that is you, look for it. Your university probably has it. If you are running this, then spread the word that you have these initiatives. So for example, information that we have is moving to Sweden or moving from Sweden about the tax agency and migration, which, you know, comes into the local regulations of visa changes and these kind of things, which is often quite a challenge for PhD students or postdocs or short-term researchers. And language courses. So as Karolinska is a very international environment, the working language is definitely English. So that is very, you know, that's very open for exchange. But then we often have people who finish their PhDs and then actually want to stay within Sweden and maybe not in academia. And then they start looking in industry, and then suddenly there really is a demand for speaking the local language. So like already providing language courses and integration within the country is very important for like the bigger picture of both, you know, the country, the industry, what we do after a PhD, and, you know, the individuals that this is about. Then there's strategic partnerships and for doctoral funding. One example is, for example, that KI has a collaboration with the China Scholarship Council to like set up in that way that, you know, PhD students funded by their home countries can come and do a PhD at KI. So this is, as I said, like strategic, so that you might not be able to influence that in any way, but it's possibilities. Then there's also the joint degrees, as were mentioned in the very first presentation. So where you get a degree from 2 universities and you have a supervisor at both universities. And an example here is this matter, which is for reproductive health collaboration between different universities option. Then there are travel grants for doctoral students. There's lots of granting information and things going on, but 2 specific ones is that KI provides access to an international database for grants, which is research professionals. So there, anyone at KI, also doctoral students, can go and look for any kind of funding that might be relevant for their level, be it travel or project funding or whatever. And KI also has their own funding scheme for travel grants. And then there's the international postdoc funding. So that's more like when you're getting out of it, like how do you inform about this? What is it like in the country? This is not like KI specific, so much like money that comes out of it to send people away, but just like people are interested in it. What is the culture about it? This is, again, the exit poll, so at the end of the PhD, and just to show that here it's about a difference between the years, but about 15 to 20% of newly defended PhDs whose goal is to do a postdoc abroad. So like, you know, what opportunities are available for them? How do they get funding? Do you know what people, where do they want to go? And there's certain schemes in Sweden where you apply for a postdoc that you then have to do abroad, and then you get money to come back and start a lab afterwards if you fulfill the needed requirements. But that's a way to like get an international experience and then still come back to Sweden, and for Sweden to have that investment of, you know, picking up information in different places. And then, of course, there's a network that's more like afterwards, like the KI alumni network. You can stay in touch. There's chapters from different, in different locations. So maybe you've done your PhD at KI, but you can stay in touch with the network in your home country. Or you could, if you're doing it here and you're interested in another country, you can see like, okay, you know, are there any KI alumni in China? And could I get in contact with them to see how maybe the system works there? And then, though this is not the initiatives, there's two things. So this is like the whole picture. There's two things that I need to point out why it is specifically important. And like, I'm from the career service, so like thinking from that perspective. So one thing why it's important, this internationalization, is that it gives you the possibility to publish with other people. So if you're interested in an academic career, then that might be valuable because it shows independence. A very specific example is that when you get further on in your academic career in Sweden at KI, if you want to apply for certain positions, you have to prove that you are independent as a researcher. And a way in which this is looked at is by you publishing without your PhD supervisors. And if you do a postdoc abroad, for example, you will probably be in quite a different network, and you will probably automatically not publish with your PhD supervisors, and automatically in this way get these like proofs of independence. So that might be a long-term important career thing. And then from the perspective, as mentioned, it's different in different places. And by doing research at another country and another institute, you realize that maybe the distance between academia and industry there is a lot smaller than it is in your home country, or the other way around. Or, you know, there's way more focus on certain translation or of research into the real world outside of academia. Or maybe the structure works totally different. As I mentioned, there's like a career ladder ID in KI, but maybe that timeline doesn't fit you. And maybe the timeline that exists at another university in another place is a lot better fitted in your life and your research. So that is very important to get those, like, understand how does the system work in different places and where do I fit in? And am I willing to make that move to fit there? So my takeaways here is that there's different things of internationalization, and you can make some things unavoidable international experience, or maybe you need a lot of strategic background, or some things you can just take the opportunity. It could be a national experience, you can make it an international experience. But my last thing is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I really do believe that. I mean, there's like chicken or the egg, but it doesn't matter how much as a university you create opportunities. If the word in the corridor is it's a waste of time, then people aren't going to do it. And the other way around, even if it's not official, if people say, oh, you're going to ruin your career if you don't have this international experience, people are going to be stressed and are going to find reasons to do it, even if it's not necessarily needed. So it's more like, what is the conversation that we're having about the value or non-value of this international experience? That is it for me. sorry for being like a couple of minutes over time. Everyone.
That has been perfect, Ayla. Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Very, you putting questions forward. So that's the important thing, asking ourselves and really think about it and reflect about all this, as you say, this is fantastic or this is terrible, it's going to be terrible for your career. So it's these extremes are not right. And actually Joanna put some examples of people that have been very successful without the internationalization. So anyway, so we have reached the end of our speakers. Thank you very much. I love great inspiration from KI, of course. And I would suggest to skip our well, definitely the 10 minutes break. It's a bit impossible, but maybe we can skip altogether and try to have some questions on the go. So if you agree, we can start with some of the participants that have put some questions forward. And I would actually, you mentioned yourself, Ayla, about joint degrees, which of course are an ideal for institutions. Now for Europe, it's the big thing, have joint degrees, and it's not easy. So joint degrees with co-tutels, co-tutels can be a very, very good way of going forward to start maybe collaborations between supervisors that can bring joint degrees. Because there was this question from Geraldine Canny. She put it to Alexander. Can you elaborate on the mutual recognition of credits across institutions, common practice as perhaps learned, for example, from the European Universities Initiative? So I was thinking about that, and that has some echoes also with these joint degrees that are not very easy to reach, and I can tell you about that. Alexander, if you may answer the question, and maybe also Ayla that was thinking and probably knows about it a bit too.
Yes, so first, thanks Geraldine for this question. Good to have you here. Yes, so starting, actually when you have a meeting and you want people really get passionate, mention co-tutels, because everybody remembers how difficult it sometimes is and how many work you need to do. And sometimes the doctorate takes 3 years, but the agreement takes 4. So then you have an issue. Okay, these are extreme cases. But what we definitely see and what we also discussed in this pragmatic peer group on co-tutel is that it's a huge bureaucratic investment, especially at the beginning. However, it gets easier as soon as you repeat it, and especially if you have a more strategic approach. Now, as I tried to also address in my presentation, we have a situation in Europe that, for instance, about 50% of university, according to an older survey we did, have credits at all. So it's not always having the same understanding of the value of a credit, but you often have cases where one university do have credits, the other not, or the one university has credits for the taught component of a doctoral program, and other translate even the research into some kind of credits. And the so-called Salzburg principles, which were also, or the recommendation, which were published 2010 about doctoral education, addressed this by saying, well, you can have credits, but it's the risk that everything focuses on the credits and you get into credit hunting here. So said this, the experience is that you need to talk between institutions, and it's very difficult, and I'm sure the European University Initiative is a good way to try new ways, but at the end, since the regulation is differently, and to have here standardization may first just not be realistic. Also, often you have legal context, but also not really fit for purpose. the importance here is really to have flexibilities between institution and also a certain or also have a trust between institution to understand they work differently. And then everybody involved needs to have a mindset and a flexibility to understand that you may not get 100% the same if you go abroad than in your institution, but that's a good thing. That's why you go abroad. So probably we all who have responsibility in universities and who has an administrative role here, management role, needs this flexibility. So I know this is maybe not the response like the magic solution, but you can solve a lot by first having a strategic approach, having a good framework, and having the flexibilities here.
Thank you very much. And maybe there is a question for Isla about what is the structural framework that support developing a joint doctoral degree, and what kind of agreements between the two institutions offer this program. Maybe as we have seen that Karolinska could give us some good ideas on how to promote internationalization. Maybe you can also give us this information that can be very valuable for us.
Yes, I must say I am definitely not the right person to inform you about this. But what I would spontaneously say is just like the one that I mentioned is based on a Marie Curie individual fellowships that produce or introduce mobility. So like using an if it's really like these joint degrees, to me sounds a lot like it's really a strategic decision of the university. So then it's like, you need to have the funders, or you need to have already a very good collaboration with another university, and really a willingness to bridge these differences that there might be, as Alexander mentioned, right? So it comes more from like a strategic perspective rather than from, I'm a PhD student and, I want a joint degree from these two things. How do I set this up, right? That's not, then you have a degree from one, you have a collaboration and you publish together and you do, like courses, but that's not the strategic thing. So I would say, yeah, maybe it depends on where the money comes from. And then like Marie Curie can be one of these things. I can see, if you want to know more, you can contact me, anyone specific, and I can see if I can get you into the contact with the right person at KI who has set things up. But that would be my thought.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would suggest that some of the participants that have specific questions about certain things, that contact or even chat now in direct message to Isla, of course, because there are some other interesting questions. For instance, Eva Natkova said she was interested about the research assessment at doctoral level. If we have some good practices, I mean, I think that's a good point, because I don't know, and that also I would like to extend this question to Agnieszka, because do you think that internationalization, so we will give the floor to Alexander to answer the question by Eva, but I would like to do also this thinking about how important is internationalization for supervisors, which the PhD candidate is with the supervisors. So the supervisors find interesting and important the internationalization of the candidate. So Alexander, if you may answer Eva.
Yes, so it's when the question is here what we mean when we talk about research evaluation for early stage researchers. So one very important element, and this is not only here in this context of internationalization, is that we need to look about what we are talking. Do we talk about the individual evaluation of the individual career of a researcher? Do we look into the evaluation of the doctoral thesis? Do we look about the evaluation of the institution? And one big risk is that we mix this up. So to give an example, so the most important evaluation of the research of early stage researchers is evaluating the thesis. And we should not, I would say, or we should take care not to involve too many policy goals when we look into the individual researchers. So this is maybe one point. And when we look into the more general question of evaluation of research, this is what I tried to say. So it cannot be just counting and saying you need to tell us how many months you have been abroad, and then you get points for that, and this is good for your career. The element is much more, and this is always also to recommend, as we have many early stage researchers here, what is actually the narrative as well between this, how it fits to what you are doing, why you are doing issues, why do you go somewhere? There are very different reasons. What did you get actually from the situation? So if we speak about the good practice, probably it's connected to this point of being able to explain what you are doing and having evaluators who are not looking into the number of your publication and not into the months where you have been or how many kilometers you are, but who can explain what you did and why you did and what you get out of it.
Indeed, definitely. I think and after I leave the floor to Agnieszka to have this think about supervisors, think about the value of internationalization. Listen to the PhD candidates actually about this points of view that you are saying, Alexander, or these arguments actually. But also I would like Joanna, maybe do you think also that internationalization is a clear objective for the candidates? I mean, there are many candidates that think that internationalization is good for them. Do they think about what Alexander is saying? Why it could be good for me, etc. So, Agnieszka, if you can tell us about what at least your point of view or your data say about how supervisors value this internationalization of the candidates.
It's really hard to answer this question because we basically don't have exact data. However, I completely agree with Alexander that we should leave the quantitative assessment methods and go with qualitative one. Because it's really important from the doctoral candidate's perspective, and also should be important from the perspective of supervisors. And the question is now the same. If we are talking about the approach of supervisors to internationalization, or we are talking how, because it really depends. Basically, we have some voices that there are that, for example, the supervisors by themselves don't have an international experience, and then it's really hard to have some contacts abroad. And of course, it's much easier if the supervisor has that contact and collaborations, and it's easier for doctoral candidates to go abroad. And in that kind of point of view, yeah, I think it really depends. Basically, really depends, and we don't have exact data. Sorry.
Thank you. I mean, I was not expecting a real data, but maybe, you know, it's something that one has the view. I mean, some data that Alexander presented, for instance, the variation among countries, for instance, of internationalization of their PhD students. I mean, I was even puzzled to see the data from my country, because it has been a big effort from the government to provide for PhD candidates funding for at least 3 months abroad every year of the PhD. To see that actually is a percentage that is very low puzzles me, really. So that means that or it's not encouraged, or it's not valued, or maybe there are so many candidates that are not funded at all. Because if they're funded officially, then they should have this opportunity. So you know, it's something that and also this, as I think that was Alia as well that said, you know, if you find that people say you don't need to do that because you can publish here, you know, in Karolinska Cell paper, or you know, the best publication you can think about to have it in Karolinska, then you don't need to go abroad to. But it's something different. Okay, so it's true that it's difficult to find. I mean, to have the data, but probably we should think also about how candidates should think about themselves by themselves. What are the values, and provide the clues for it. So, and what do you think about these candidates, Joanna? Your experience. What can you say about it?
I think for most people, you know, going abroad is a deliberate decision. It's something that they actually think very carefully and decide to do, because it has such a huge impact on your personal life that you want to think it through. And I think for institutions as well, right? When institutions decide to invest in internationalization, in becoming more international, it's also a very deliberate decision, because it's, you know, it takes time, it requires investment. So it's something you need to think carefully. And overall, in general, in terms of the individual experiences, what I gathered from talking to these people is that people actually underestimate how beneficial and how impactful it can actually be to go international. The first thing that comes to mind is also to get the excellent training, to go to the top institutions, the top labs, the top research groups in the field, and get the best training. But there are so many other benefits that people realize after they've been abroad and after having become PIs themselves, right? And the key question is really for both individuals and institutions, I believe, to think, what do I want to achieve with internationalization? Is it the excellence training? Or is it more publications in high impact journals? You know, what do both, either at the institutional level, what do you want to achieve with internationalization? And then once you know what you want to achieve, you can define your main goal or a couple of goals and work towards making it happen and making the most out of it. And Karolinska's example is a very complete example, right? Because it's like they thought about all the value chain and how they could amplify or make the most out of each factor. You know, what makes a good PhD, and if this makes if going to international conference makes a good PhD, let's reward people for doing this, and let's promote that people do this, and let's try, you know, to promote a healthy environment for this to happen, and so on. And they thought about almost everything, I would say. And I think it's also trying to see the whole picture, right, and have a holistic approach that tries to put the puzzle together and enhance the puzzle as a whole.
Yes, but I think that we need to give from organizations, from of course institutions, to give clues, to give tools to do so. There are some interesting way of knowing what are the clues, and it's through the forms that you have to fill in for Marie Curie's or for postdocs grants, that ask you for a certain number of things that you haven't seen while you were doing your PhD. I was assessing somebody to fill in the new Marie Curie's forms for a Marie Curie for a postdoc, and there were some things that this person that I was absolutely, you know, brilliant as a PhD student and has published a lot, and he's very international. He has gone here and there, and he didn't understand, for instance, these transferable skills or you know, data management or leadership, you know, and they are asked, why, you know, what are you going to do during your postdoc to increase your leadership? I've never been told about that. I've been doing experiments, or I've been doing research in the library. So I think that we need to do a lot to help candidates and to help institutions. And I think the example of Karolinska has been brilliant, because they show certain things that are feasible to encourage this internationalization. And another thing, I mean, there was a question from Veronica, how to encourage PhD students. I think that definitely has been seen as an example for Karolinska, and there will be other examples, of course, and in these reports that we will be published soon, we will see how can we, or which issues can be dealt with by institutions. One other thing that I think was mentioned more than once was the sustainability and the greening. And what have we learned something about this distant supervision, these possibilities, you know, doing online research, but really in exchanges and placements actually online, because that has been done. So I think that we should think about if what you were mentioning, Alexander, something about this precisely. What can you say something else, or?
Well, there is a little bit the risk that due to this, to the challenge with screening, that we get into a drive to do less. Maybe also because it could be cheaper, and also a lot of especially early stage researchers themselves feel, no, actually, I mean, this is not a sustainable mode of transportation we have. We need to do something about that. At the same time, we see as well, or we have seen also during the COVID, that you cannot replace all personal exchanges by virtual means. So what we need here is really a discussion, how can we make it more meaningful? So exactly this idea of internationalization, of I just do it because it's now part of a normal curriculum without looking, is it really fit for purpose, is maybe the wrong direction, and may lead into a situation where it gets more and more difficult to justify why we need a physical mobility. So one challenge, and this is for all of us, is really to, in the last couple of years, it was kind of a no-brainer. Of course, you need to travel. Of course, internationalization is good. But what we see now is that in the future, we need to be able to better explain to the society why we are doing and what is the positive impact we get when we are going from Europe to Asia for doing research. Just saying that's what you do today is not enough. And this discussion, I would say we're still really at the beginning. Probably not everybody in doctoral education is aware, because this is often not discussed in the context of doctoral education, but it's discussed on the level of university leadership. And therefore we need to be aware of this and react and take our possibility to ourselves, bring to the table what we have for ideas.
May I jump in quickly?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm thinking exactly, Alexander, that like it becomes even more important when it's like, you know, either we can't travel because of all of the reasons, you know, that it's just impossible, or that it's just not reasonable anymore to spend the amount of, you know, like CO2 and money on doing the travel if it's actually needed. And I think it just comes back to the point of like, why are we doing it, right? Because, for example, the international conference that you need to talk at, there was a question, by the way. It needs to be international conference. It can be an international conference that is organized in Sweden if you don't have the means or the interest. It just needs to be international research, so you have the chance to, you know, have this interaction and to discuss people and meet people. And that's the point of like, why is it mandatory to go to a conference? Well, it's nice to practice presenting, right? So that part of it can be that. But it's all about the networking. It's all about meeting people, and it's all about the, and so just putting it, I mean, even, sorry, this one, but like, I see like 4 other faces, right? Everyone else is a name. And so we're transferring information, but, you know, it's a lot harder for somebody to, we're not going to be at the coffee stand and somebody's going to pass by and be, hey, Isla, like, you know, can we connect, or can we? So yeah, so then it's going to be like, if the reason that we're doing it is networking and connections and talking to people and getting exposed to experiences, then we need to see how can we do this digitally, and just having a webinar is not filling it. There's also going to be a need to then reach out over LinkedIn or email or whatever. And then we get into, yeah, it's not the same. We don't have the same emotional feeling with somebody that we get a message from compared to somebody that we see in real life. But at least we're aware that we're not sending PhD students to an international conference just so that they can practice presenting, but also so that they have the chance to meet people. And that is something that then needs to be replaced if we decide, for whatever, be it COVID, be it environment reasons, not to send people physically. How do we replace the actual purpose of this requirement?
Well, yeah, I think it was a brilliant thinking thoughts that you share with us, Isla, indeed. And actually, I take the challenge to think about how can we in UNICA, as we have organized this webinar, and hopefully a couple of them that will build up upon this internationalization and other aspects for PhD candidates, to take to think about how we can really manage this coffee break, real coffee break, in which you interact, in which you really socialize and get the most out of the internationalization, which is share the common with different cultures. Sorry, Joanna, you wanted to say hello, yeah. and then 1 minute, because we should be on time to finish this.
Okay. No, I just wanted to add, and it's in line with what you just said, that actually when we thinking about the meaning and the purpose of doing what we plan to do, I think then it comes very important to have personalized career support, so that when you decide to go, you actually do make the most out of it. And sometimes, and for that to happen, it's super important to learn from others who have done it. Some tips and some recommendations on how you can also maximize the impact of what you are going to do, the positive impact of what you are going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that we should end here. Of course, we could be much longer talking about these interesting things, but I think we have enough food for thoughts now. And we can think about how important is going to be for PhD candidates, for supervisors, for institutions, really to think on the whole challenges that have PhD candidates, and among them how to fulfill internationalization, being kind to our planet as well, and well, assuming that we have also this pandemic now, and then thank you very much to all of you. It has been a very interesting exchange of thoughts and ideas and data as well, and I thanks very much to all participants. I hope that we have fulfilled your expectations. And I will be waiting for our next webinar here in UNICA. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Laura, for all the technical support. Bye now. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Laura. Okay.
Thank you, Ale and Joanna.
Yeah.
It was great to have you.
Yeah, fantastic. Two international examples.
Is there a post discussion with the speakers, or are we relieved of our?
We can go now. Thank
you
you very much.
free.
But please, yes, we will keep
be
in touch because
for future.
Absolutely,
I copied some of the questions that were addressed to me that maybe weren't addressed.
Yes, I mean, I thought they were very directed to you
so
and
I might
Karolinska.
just write an answer to you, and maybe you can.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very
but
good idea.
we will definitely sort of make very vivid this group on doctoral studies in UNICA. So you know that you put you really pointed at a very interesting thing, how to do a real changes in these virtual mobilities that we are doing. So thank you very much, Ella, and thank you very much, Joanna.
Good. Let's be in touch.
Chaperone will be here helping as well. Thank you very much indeed. Bye now. Bye. Okay, Laura, I think, well, yeah.
There are still there are still participants online, but
yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can, okay, we will, yeah.
If you wish, I can send you a link if we want to have a short chat. So
I have something else, but maybe in half an hour or so.
Yeah, if you wish, I can send you. So I can send you a separate link. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Carmela.
Laura. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. See you later.